Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Victory Never Sleeps. Tonight we are going to have a variety of members of FA leadership in the Þórshof district. But before we get to that, um, just kind of top of the show things. Some of you may have noticed last week we did not broadcast on Twitter like we usually do. That is again a problem this week. They recently changed their policies, so we've got to get verified and have the premium membership and whatnot. That's in process, but that takes an undetermined amount of time. So hopefully we will be back up there. Hopefully our folks that normally watch this on Twitter will join us over here on YouTube tonight or one of the other fine places that broadcast this program live. Such as Odyssey, Entropy, Twitch, Rumble, and VK, and hopefully back on Twitter very soon. I guess since last time I spoke to you guys, we had Sigrblót at Sigrheim. When I say we, I mean we in the bigger spirit sense. My travel plans were derailed due to Friday's worldwide airline nonsense. It effectively eliminated my ability to make that event, which is unfortunate. I was very excited, and it looked like they had a great time without me. So I'm definitely going to be there next year. And I hope you guys join us. We may have some pictures of that tonight, as it technically happened in Þórshof district. And a couple of the movers and shakers that made that a success are here with us this evening. And I'm sure, matter of fact, it's probably what we'll start off talking about. In the meantime, as always, Ronald Blake has set the tone for generosity, donating $100 to our current folk services push for a family that is in some pretty dire straits on figuring out some housing due to unforeseen circumstances. So we're working on that, and we appreciate his donation towards it. Also, he started off by buying us 3 coffees, which is $15. We appreciate that as always. Thank you so much, Ronald. Folks that want to do the buy coffee thing or figure out any of the ways to donate to any of the worthy AFA projects, descriptions are, it's in the description of this program how to do that. There's the little QR code deal, variety of things, but we appreciate everybody's generosity. You guys are awesome. Other news coming up next month, we have Freyfaxy at Baldershof. That's in Murdoch, Minnesota. That's coming up on the 16th through the 18th of August. Love to see you guys there. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. And that's where we're at right now, top of the show. Also, I want to advertise a couple of new products we have out this week. We have got some vintage designed AFA shirts and hoodies. They look amazing. Products have been really good quality. Folks seem to really like them. We're still working on the best system of doing that. So if you're interested, go ahead and get yours. I think that's what we got at the top of the show, other than to once again remind you guys, like, share, subscribe, any place that you find this. The biggest tool that we have to help us right now is you guys' word of mouth. So if you know people that would be interested in this program for any reason, please invite them to watch it live or consume it after the fact, either here on YouTube, on any of the other spots, or as a podcast coming up. You know, those get released on Fridays. So a lot of ways to find us and listen, and we appreciate your support in spreading the good word. I think that's what we got, top of the program. So we got a lot of people who we have not seen before. So I think we'll go around and do introductions first, and then we'll talk a little bit about Sigrblót at Sigrheim. So first timers on the program. Joe, let's start with you. Can you tell folks a little bit about yourself, how you found Asatru, and what brought you to the Asatru Folk Assembly?
Oh, hello, everybody. Well, actually, I'm not even sure how long it was ago, but at least 4 or 5 years when I became a member, at the very least. Actually, a lady I was speaking to up in Alaska introduced me to it. I told her I felt like an island. There was no one around me who thought the same way, and I'd already become familiar with Stephen McNallen beforehand, but she told me there was actually the Asatru Folk Assembly, which I had no knowledge of. I would just see interviews with him, so that's how I found it. I joined and I never left. And like I said, I don't even know how long I've been doing this, but at least a few years ago, there was no folk builders in Ohio really for a short while, and a folk builder from, I do believe, Wisconsin came down and lit a fire under our butts saying we weren't doing anything. So I sat there for a while and said, well, if no one's going to do it, I guess I will. And I stepped up and haven't left, and found all you fine folk, and I love being here. So that's pretty much where I came from.
So that the folks listening kind of get an idea of the geography, whereabouts in Ohio are you?
Near Akron, if that makes sense to anyone. I'd say northeast, about an hour south of Cleveland.
There you go. And Joe is a folk builder in the district. Next up, I think this is your first time on, Mike. Is that correct? Mike, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, first time on the program. I'm glad to be
Tell
here.
folks about yourself and how you came to both Asatru and the Asatru Folk Assembly, if you would.
Sure. So a long journey to get here. I've been Asatru, or at least what the meaning of the word is, loyal to the Asir. This is going on my 33rd year. I was fortunate enough to, and I'm still not sure if they called me or I found them, but either way, here I am. And I was involved when I was much younger with what we like to refer to as an Asatru adjacent organization. And then I kind of stepped away back from anything that was organized for quite some time. But I always, with the advent of the internet, I was always keeping tabs on what was going on, watched some groups come and go. And the one group that always remained was the Asatru Folk Assembly. Before we were calling what we do folkish, it didn't dawn on me that a folk religion could be any other way. And not quite 3 years ago, I decided to rejoin my folk in an official capacity, decided to become a folk builder and serve our folk. So that's how I found the AFA. And like Joe said, I'm not leaving. So I'll be in this one for life.
All right. And can you give folks a little heads up on geography? Where are you located?
All right. So I'm roughly half an hour south of Cleveland and roughly 20 minutes west of Akron. So about 45 minutes northwest of Joe. Also here in Ohio.
All right. We will continue, but before we do, Alcy Miller bought us 3 coffees. It's a $15 donation. Thank you. We appreciate it. John, is this your first time on the program?
It is my first time on the program.
All right. Well, tell folks a little bit about yourself. What brought you to Asatru? What brought you to the AFA, and where you're located, if you would, please.
My name is John Rock. I am located in the great Hoosier Borean state of Indiana. And I came to Asatru, specifically Asatru, several years ago when I joined the AFA. Before that, I was a practicing Odinist and ran into a friend of mine who was I have a friend who owns a tattoo shop, and he was tattooing a gentleman who is now my kinsman, who said, "Hey, have you heard about the AFA? You should come join up with us." And I was skeptical at first because I did not actually realize that people like us existed, and I assumed that we were, that the internet Asatru scene was full of undesirables, and I was pleasantly surprised to find otherwise. And then I joined with the AFA, and I have been with us since then. I am located in central Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis. And but if you're in Indiana, I'll come get you. I travel all about Indiana.
All righty. And then next up, we got the two Tylers. We're going to start with the bearded Tyler first. Bearded Tyler, tell folks a little bit about yourself, what brought you to Asatru, what brought you to the AFA, and where you're located.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Tyler, the bearded Tyler, and I live out near Asheville, North Carolina, the better Carolina. I came to Asatru in 2017. I had a lot of doubts about Christianity going on at that time, and I've always been a lover of historical fictions, and I came across an author called Bernard Cornwell. He wrote a book called The Last Kingdom. It's about a young man who grew up Christian, and then he got kidnapped by the Vikings, and he learned all about his the culture and the gods of his people, and that resonated a lot with me. A lot of the doubts he was having, I was having. So I came to Asatru because of a book, and that started me on my journey. Started to look around online and everything, and I actually came across the AFA on the Reddit. At that time, there were a lot of heathens on Reddit, and that's where I learned a lot of stuff. And they kept on talking about these awful individuals called the AFA who that they loved their people and everything, and all that stuff resonated. So I looked at the website and I looked up the YouTube videos and all that stuff, and I looked a little bit. And I reached out to the folk builder in my area at that time, and he asked me to go to a moot, and I did, and I met some real good folks I talk to now, and they got me out to more events and such, and I dropped my application in the parking lot of the first moot. A couple of months after that, I was at Austera in the South, the first Austera that I went to. And I walked away from that event with no doubt in my mind in 2018. I've not looked back since. About me, I've got 3 sons between the ages of 9 and 1.5, and I have a daughter on the way. Always wanted a girl, so that's happening. Life is good. I work as a carpenter. Been married for 10 years, and other than my family, there's nothing I love more in the world than our AFA, and I am pleased to be here.
Fantastic. We're very glad to have you. And Smooth Tyler, what do you got for us? Tell us a little bit about yourself, what brought you to the AFA, and where you're located.
All right. Well, I am folk builder Tyler Saugert. I'm in southwestern New Hampshire. I'm a proud father and proud husband. My coming to Asatru story is pretty typical of a lot of people. I grew up in an agnostic household, so I didn't really have any spiritual guidance. I went through like my, preteen, I know everything atheism phase, and once you get to the bottom of that rabbit hole, you find that there's more to the story. I've always been into my ethnic heritage. I'm almost 100% German ethnically. due to a German enclave in northwestern Ohio staying together. So I always was super infatuated with, my ancestors and my history. And then I stumbled upon just reading into pre-Christian religions, and it was the first time that anything made sense, and it felt like something had been like hiding from me my entire life. And a really cool little tidbit about that is I told my mom how I was feeling spiritually, and then she just said, well, I'm going to send you something in the mail. She sent me this book here, and it's not the best rune book, but hey, mom was trying in the 90s. And what was cool is like you can see my little scribbles of me as a baby, like scribbling on the runes. So it was like kind of a surreal hair standing up moment to realize that I kind of, just through blood memory found my way home. So, yeah, that's me.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that story with us. So we're going to have a lot of people joining us this evening. Got a question over in the chat. Will Svan be on tonight? He should be at some point. He was going to give some other people a chance to get out here a little bit and also kind of steal away a little bit of time to spend with his family, but he should be joining us a little bit later. We've got Witten Clifford Erickson and his lovely wife, Katie, on the show today. They are coming at you from Erie, Pennsylvania. And we also have Witten Daniel Young from the inferior, so I am told, Carolina, the Southern Carolina. So that's not a very big state, but he's somewhere in South Carolina, for what it's worth. So there we go. And we have Nick Rice, our producer, who has made every one of these programs except for one. He is very close to Sigerheim there in north central Tennessee. And that said, speaking of Sigerheim, we had an event there this last weekend that I so very much wanted to be at and was not able to. Nick, could you talk to folks a little bit about, I don't know, your experience at Sigrblót this year and kind of how that went down, stuff you think folks would be interested in?
Absolutely. So, leading up to Sigrblót, it had me and Witten Young and folk builder Tyler Bethay just making all the plans, getting everything ready, and everything looked good. And then Friday morning, we're on the way out. Tyler's on the way to pick you up from the airport, and you're a no-show. So, well, the show must go on. So we did a little bit of finagling, and well, it went well. We had about 25 people out there. We luckily, Miss Katie got to jump on a quick moving vehicle on a last minute notice, make her way down from Pennsylvania and go to east, made it up from Georgia. Got a little Gothic replacements, but we had a couple bloats on Friday with just the group of us. The bigger group showed up on Saturday, and we had a really good time. And all in all, I mean, I think we really pulled through and had a really solid event, and it was everything we could have asked for, aside from, you, but that's okay.
So for the record, folks, I tried. I was at the airport for about 8 hours, and I could never quite make it out of Reno, unfortunately. I wanted to be there.
No, we made do and had a great event. Plenty of good bloats, a great sumble, a nice auction, and a lot of good time for folk and a lot of good meals. So it was a pretty good darn weekend.
Excellent. So, Katie, as Nick mentioned, you hopped in a car and drove 11 hours or so down to make stuff happen and to cover for my absence. First, thank you very much for that. think, I speak for everybody when we say we really, really appreciate your willingness to do that for us. Can you tell folks a little bit about your weekend and stuff you think is worth noting for the people?
Sure. First, I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I can hop in a car and drive at a moment's notice because my job, which are very, very noisily not watching a movie next to me right now, it travels with me. So, and honestly, I didn't need to do much this weekend. Nick and Tyler and his kindred did a really good job, and they had everything well in hand. So, I was just there in case I was needed for anything. They did everything very well on their own, but I had a very nice weekend. It was actually probably the first weekend at an event where I've ever had the opportunity to actually just kind of relax and talk to people, because usually I'm busy. Some of that's self-imposed, but there literally was nothing that I could do to help because it was, like I said, it was really well organized and taken care of. So I enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed the chance to get to know people in a way that I haven't had a chance to get to know them in the past. But yeah, I really enjoyed myself this weekend. I thought it was a good weekend.
Are the statues cool in person? I still have not got to see those statues that I'm very, very mentally invested in.
They are very, very much cooler in person. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to sort of like landscape and pretty them up one day when we have a little bit more of an organized space there. Gonna go crazy with the flowers and stuff.
Excellent. Me too. There's a lot of very exciting things that I'm waiting to do there. And I guess one of the men that had the most to do with setting it up and making the event run, Tyler, can you tell us a little bit about how your weekend went and anything folks should know about Sigrblót this year?
Yes, sir. So the first thing I'd like to say is that this event was a huge demonstration of perseverance and industriousness. I'd say the majority of the people who that turned out, they came to work. Everybody there, for the most part, put in a whole lot of work, from apprentice Charles Moore putting in a lot of work, putting up our tent. I don't think our tent would have been ready whenever the folk arrived had it not been for Charles. Our directions had been weathered and turned into a rat's nest, so there was no logic involved on my part. But Charles said, hey, I think that this goes here, this connects into that, and we were able to raise a shelter very well under his direction. All the meals were team efforts. Yeah, I mean everything, top to bottom, was just everybody rolled their sleeves up and they worked really hard. But highlights for me was conversation. When we did our welcoming of the gods, we made sure to emphasize that from this point on, everything that we do needs to be in the mindset of piety and the ritual. And I'd say that 90% of what I overheard was topics on Asatru, and that is pretty rare. There were folks talking about the runes. There were folks talking about their favorite events, how they came into Asatru, their motivations, the things that keep them going and such. A whole lot of pretty good conversations, and that was my highlight, was to see that everybody kept kind of on task, and a lot of strength was built. Bonds were strengthened. A lot of the people there already knew each other, but there were a handful of like outliers, and I think they they were made to feel the real welcome, and I think that bonds were built at this event that are going to last, and will make our region expand even more, which will help to call the more of our the folk home. So that's what I've got.
Your region, you say? So for those of you who might be curious, what all falls into the Þórshof district? I'm sure Nick has got a graphic for us that's going to show everybody. Þórshof is orange. So as you can see, that's South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, and Michigan, and everything further to the north and east of that in the United States, including, if you drew that line kind of straight up through Canada, and everybody in Potato Europe. So that's what we got going on. It is a population dense district. I don't know that geographically it's the most like square miles, but it's certainly very, very thick with members. So we got tons of people spread out all the way across. You can hear on here number of different accents. I don't think we've got any like super nasally Yankees. We don't got some of the thicker and more obnoxious Northeast accents, which is cool. But we do have some good Southern accents on here. Got a lot of different people in a lot of different places. This would also encompass, when I say Tater Europe, if you guys don't, I don't know, I've never seen the meme or whatever, we kind of split Europe in half with, I guess, Northern Europe and Central Europe mostly going into the Þórshof district, and kind of more Mediterranean Europe going to the Nordhof district. No, I'm ahead of myself. I'm sorry, guys. So they have the entirety of Europe. I am thinking of future plans on what we're doing when we get our next Hof. I apologize. I completely messed you guys up there. Disregard the last whatever few seconds I just said. So the entirety of Europe and that chunk of the United States I mentioned, and that Nick showed you in orange. So we're happy to talk about anything you guys want tonight in general. Certainly happy to talk about anything district related. Absolutely, we'll talk about Þórshof itself, but tonight's kind of getting to know the leadership of the district as a whole. So that's kind of the idea this evening. We got a lot of great people, some of them entertaining, and it's good to have them all on. Looking at where we're at tonight on starting some topics and questions. Sorting through a couple of things. I apologize. All right, so the Wolf Throne asks, you can always count on Wolf Throne to come through with the questions. I know you stated in the past that the AFA does not believe in equality. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I interpret that as saying no two persons are equal in quality, that no two persons are the same, and that no two races of men are the same. So I just wanted to clarify, does the AFA have an official stance on the political side of equality, such as equal opportunity and equal rights? Like, should women have rights, and should everyone have a chance to prove their worth for a particular job or career, regardless of their race? Whitten Erickson, would you like to take this question?
I was hoping you would call on me. I'd love to answer this question. So I think that in the first part of the question, that basic interpretation that no two persons have the same quality is correct. We will say that we don't believe in equality, or that equality is a myth, and that's true. Just observationally, if you look at the world, the concept of equality in, the American notion of equality, I suppose, is that everyone has the same capabilities, everyone has the same aptitude. But if we observe the world, that's just not the way that it really is. And that's okay. That's the natural order of things. Some people are stronger, some people are smarter, some people are faster. And that's the way that the world is supposed to be. Men and women are not the same as each other. Men excel at some things, women excel at other things, and we're better off when we work together as men and women. As far as things related to occupations, I think that really would, depend on those capabilities, and some of that is, your natural gifts that are given to you from your ancestors and from the gods. You need to nurture those skills, though. If you are blessed with good health and just a good physique in the sense that you are physically healthy, you need to not be lazy about that. You need to nurture your body and grow your body through a good diet and exercise and learning skills. Your muscle memory and what your body is used to doing is as important as its base strength and all of that. The same thing goes with your mind or talents related to music or art. You can have something that's just there inside of you that maybe other people don't have, but you got to do something with it for it to have any worth. And as far as different races, I think that extends out the same way. The races are not equal, but that doesn't mean that one is superior over the other. What it does mean is that they're in sort of a competition, the way that people are in our societies or in a job market, and that success is something that is made to happen. Victory is something that is made to happen. Nobody has claim to success. That's something that is exercised. Al-Shirgothi, Matt and I were talking about this not so long ago in relation to rights. When people think about equality, people will often bring in, rights into that conversation. The common phrasing would be God-given rights. If you Asatruized it, it could be God's given rights, I suppose, but that's not a real thing. If you strip away all of these things that we've built up, just like one can build up their mind or build up their body, if we strip away civilization, your rights are not any more existent than a bear's or a wolf's or a fish's. You have to assert your place in the world. You have to stake a claim to anything, including rights. The right to your life. Well, you maintain the right to your life by defending it and by removing obstacles to the continuation of your life, whatever that might look like in a particular circumstance. So no, we don't believe in equality. We do believe in treating people fairly. We do believe in justice. So, we don't believe in, living a life where you treat any living creature, whether it's a person or an animal, badly, just for the heck of it. We expect people to act responsibly, to act in favor of the order that the Aesir established, which means being respectful to life, and in particular, I think life that is weaker than you. You have a duty when you are strong or dominant to also be a protector and a caretaker. So I hope that answers your question. If you have any follow-ups, I know you're asking.
Yeah, I guess add a couple of things. I've mentioned before that politics is very situational and the context matters a lot. So there's different answers to different, certainly to different circumstances and different situations folks find themselves in. That said, our values should affect our politics and our political decisions. The AFA doesn't, we deal in values, and there's political implications sometimes, but overall, the concept of equality is, I don't know, degrading to the human condition. In order to get equality, because you can't make those who underperform perform better, the only way to enforce it is to hamper those that perform, that quote unquote overperform, that perform highly. And setting a ceiling on people's ability to achieve and succeed is wrong. It's just wrong. It's wrong all the time to do. The Asatru Folk Assembly supports the concept of struggle and merit and success through effort and through courage and through discipline and through doing. But yeah, nobody on this screen is equal in station, in physical ability, in speed, in knowledge, in any of these factors. And to suggest otherwise diminishes the accomplishments of those of us that have, at great cost, been able to, in whatever way, rise above the pack and achieve something. So hopefully that clarifies. Something's going on with my power supply here. That's why my video feed dropped. I'm going to play with that for a second. Brandy has a question, and she wants to know who here.
All right, so we lost. I should go through Matt. I will finish the questions so we can keep things going until he gets power back. Whit and Brandy Fassett asks our panel here, who from this amazing panel of folk are coming to Baldershof for Freyfaxi next month? And she's asking for a friend. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend. I have used all of my currently available time off from work, traveling to Midsummer in California and making sure that I'm available for Winter Nights in New Hampshire and taking a few other days here and there to make sure I can do some other, mostly Asatru Folk Assembly related things, but believe it or not, even a few personal things. By implication, that means also that my lovely wife will not be there. But Nick, are you going to be there?
No, sir. Unfortunately, much like you, I am out of PTO for a while.
Maybe let's do a show of hands. Who is going to be there? Awesome. So, Mike, let's start with you. What are you looking forward to the most about going to Freyfaxi at Baldershof?
I would say that first time entering Baldur's home here on Midgard, likely the most recent in potentially 1,000 years. And a very close second to that is, getting to meet some of the folk up that way that I have yet to meet, and get to see people up that way that I already know. A lot of strong bonds with everybody that I've met in the AFA, leadership or otherwise. And anytime I can spend more time with the folk and meet folk I haven't met before, it's a wonderful experience. So very much looking forward to it. And that'll be my first time there. So
I was just about to ask, you read my mind, if that's going to be your first trip to Baldershof.
Yes.
It is a beautiful temple. It is, it's hard to describe, but you can describe it for us when you get back. I've been there, but it's always nice to hear things in someone else's own words and their own experience.
Absolutely.
What about you, John? You raised your hand, right?
Yes, I will be there. Like so many people, I'm looking forward just to visiting Murdock, Minnesota. Wanted to go ever since I was a child, so I will finally have that opportunity.
Awesome. You're in for a treat. It's.
I'm sure that I am.
Very fun.
In seriousness, I have also never been to Baldershof, so I am very much looking forward to visiting Baldershof and seeing the Hoff.
Not the people.
People come and people go. That Hoff's there forever.
I wish you were kidding.
And the people. I love all the people. I used to go to Elsie Fest, all the time in Baldershof district. So I have gotten to know some of the Baldershof faithful, and it's always good to visit with them.
They're good people. We'll keep them.
Yeah, they're not Thorshof people, but they're okay. They're all right.
Nobody's perfect. No equality, right? And actually, just to add on that, that's sort of like an underpinning, I think, theological premise for why there can't be equality, because we also don't believe in perfection. So that's just not the way the world works. Wait, and Daniel, you raised your hand, right? Well, will you and Heather both be going?
Yes, sir. Heather and Lauren and myself will be going there, and it's our first time too. Looking forward to being in the light of Baldur's Temple. Some of my very closest friends are, situated around at Hoff. Go through Rob Stam recently relocated to that area. Of course, Whit and Brandy is, one of the very few women in the world that I actually call sis. I only give that name to a couple of girls. There's a reason for that. Looking forward to spending some time with Nathan and Ashley. And I have never met the very famous now Jason Gallagher. Now I'm so looking forward to that. Jason's
you're in for a treat. Jason's the man.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He's old school. He's been in the Asatru Folk Assembly longer than anyone on this screen. Now, Sigrblót Matt has him beat, but he is not on the screen technically right now. So,
yeah, Jason's one of those guys I've gotten to know as much as you can get to know somebody through social media and stuff, and we have a lot of mutual and common interests. And I'm looking forward to talking music and all the stuff that we have in common with him. He's just a phenomenal character, and really looking forward to getting to know him and getting to meet him finally.
Awesome. I'm going to just move on to the next question. Owl of Omens asks, who's y'all's favorite god or goddess? Nick, let's start with you.
All right. Well, I think I kind of answered that in a recent class question for one of our Gotham classes. I think the god, I would lump it in as my favorite god as well. The god I have the most connection with, really. Before coming to the AFA, I would have said Odin or Ur, but just starting my journey in the AFA, Baldershof and such, and getting to know all the people there, getting to go to the Hoff, and just trying to, dive into that and connect with Balder has been a really amazing thing. And so Balder's the answer.
All right, that's a good answer from a Baldershof man. Joe, how about you? Favorite god or goddess?
It would have what's that? And why? It'd have to be Thor. We walk, we don't run. We both have an affinity for justice. You won't see it often, but a fiery temper. I chose him because he chose me. I speak with him. Let's just put it that way. And we drink whiskey together. So hail Thor.
Hail Thor.
Hail Thor.
Mike, your favorite god or goddess?
It's an interesting question. Favorite. I don't know if I could say I have a favorite. I can say that if you asked me that question when I first came to Asatru, I would have said Thor. If you asked me 20 years ago, I would have said Tyr. And when I hear favorite, I think more of the stages where I have been in my life, and I've come to a greater understanding of their nature through my life experience. So currently, I would say the All-Father, Odin, has been very prevalent for the past 7 or 8 years for me. I guess if you want to say coming out of my my Tyr phase, though it's not really a phase. Like I said, it's I've actually tracked it throughout the years, and I've come to understand why I'm drawn more toward one of our particular gods as I age. So currently, it would be Odin.
I think you're right about that position in life, both as far as, how old you are, but that's not all of it. Also the other things surrounding what your life is like, what your role in life is, what your role to other people is, makes a big impact, at least on who someone, might be drawn to more than the other gods and goddesses, perhaps. John, you're up.
Like Mike, I'm reticent to use the word favorite, but I am in this stage of my life partial to Tyr. I also often get partial toward Heimdall, but Tyr is, among other things, representative of righteous discipline. And sorry, I have dogs barking. And also doing what needs to be done, a matter of sacrifice. I affiliate him a lot with the job of folk building, sort of like many of us sort of affiliate Heimdall with, the Gothic level in our church. So I have an affinity for Tyr.
Well said. Well said. And yeah, since John mentioned it, let's take a minute to just recognize all of our folk builders. I think most people recognize this in some degree or another, but folk building really is a position of service and sacrifice to the folk and to the gods. They put a lot of time and their own money and time away from their family and friends into that that calling to bring our folk all together and to bring their folk closer to their gods and goddesses. Welcome back, Alshir Gothi. We were going through Al of Omen's question about who are y'all's favorite god or goddesses. We had wrapped up the previous question. Do you want to go next?
Sure. And thanks, Cliff. I've been listening the whole time, and I just kind of figured out how to get my audio back as soon as I was able to get the video back. But I was silly and not paying attention, and my laptop was plugged in, but the little thing between the power thingy and the wall was loose. And anyways, whole bunch of nonsense, but you handled it really well. So I know a lot of people have gone and given their answer. This is not aimed at them. I would just feel impious answering the question because it's like, which is your favorite parent? Barring a really bad experience, it's just kind of, it's not something I do. I know that there are some people that have a particularly proprietary relationship with one of our gods or goddesses that stands out above or different from the others, but I don't feel that way. Kind of like Mike was saying, in the different seasons of our life, depending on our circumstance, things we're going through, whether we're looking at the world as a husband, as a father, as a young man that's just striking out on his own. Different of our gods and goddesses appeal to us at different times. Are we badly broken and in need of some caring and some support? Sometimes that's the time that our goddesses really stand out and our need for a relationship with them stands out. So I think that question really depends on where you're at in your life. But one of the beautiful things about polytheism is we have many gods and many goddesses, so we can have a wealth of really significant relationships between ourselves and divinity in many different forms. Who's next on the... Go ahead and finish this one out, Cliff, because you know where you were at.
Sure thing. We got the bottom row still. So next up is Githia Katie.
So my answer is pretty much the same as Mike's and Matt's. I'm not gonna go on too much about it. I've been doing this for a real long time, and I think the longer you've been practicing Asatru and the longer you've dedicated yourself to the gods, to the Aesir, you develop relationships with the gods as they come into your life in a way that you need them to. So it was Freya when I was 19 years old and I was figuring out what I was doing. It was Odin when I was experiencing difficulties and I wanted to grow and be better and stronger and gain wisdom. It was Frigga when I became a mom. It's Freyr now, who I've always thought was kind of a nifty god, but now that we're looking into the future of the Asatru Folk Assembly and Freyr's Hoff is, in the relatively near future, I find myself working to build a relationship with him. And by that, I mean, I'm not sitting here and having a conversation with Freyr where he answers me word for word. Obviously, what I mean by that is I am developing a relationship, as in I am developing a deeper understanding of who I think Freyr is as one of our gods. But as I don't have a particular one of our gods that I find that I'm closest to or that I prefer more than the others. I just find that with every stage of my life, I have a different reason to learn and grow closer to a different one of the Aesir. Assuming that makes sense, because I'm not the first one to say it. So
I think it makes perfect sense. Smooth Tyler, you're next.
Yes, I'm also reluctant to use the word favorite. I think my understanding of the gods is very dynamic, and I call to different ones depending on what I'm going through, as others have said here. But I'd say currently if I had to reduce it to my favorites currently are the ones that my daughter will call to on herself. So for example, right now, my daughter, who's only a 2-year-old, is very infatuated with Balder because I made this beautiful painting of him that sits upon our altar. And every night at dinner, she looks over and she goes, "That's my Balder. That's my Balder." And she also is very into Thor right now. So to answer the question in the way it was framed, I would say my 2 favorites right now are Thor and Balder. Just seeing my daughter all on her own call to them. But Myself, I've been calling a lot to like Air and Idun and Freyr recently, but that doesn't take away from my relationships, and my future wants to develop further ones with all of our ACers. So
Thank you. Bearded Tyler, you are now next.
So not to be an echo chamber, I don't think you can have a favorite. Polytheism it works a little bit differently. I look at it a lot more like a god of the moment. There are times where I call upon Odin a lot more. Recently, right before we conceived our daughter, we had held our May Day ritual where we called upon Freyr, and we blessed the wombs of our women. And I feel like Freyr was a participant in the gifting cycle there. Real grateful for that, and I've been trying to acknowledge him more. I'm a big hunter. I spend my whole fall and winter, I'm in the woods quite a bit. So if I don't answer an email immediately, that's why. And when that happens, if I have a harvest, I pray to Uller. At the beginning of a hunt and at the end of a hunt. If I harvest an animal, he gets its heart. So it's all about a god of a moment for me. There are gods that I need to work more to have the better relationship with. So I would say if anything, there are gods that I need to work more with, as opposed to there being a favorite. I need to work more with Bragi and Forseti, and these other gods that a lot of us don't hear about as much. So that's what I would say. I have no favorite, but I have those that I need to build a more intimate connection with.
Thank you very much. I will go next, since that is the order on the screen. I think affinity is probably a better word than favorite. When I was younger, but not brand new in Asatru, I really tried to foster a devotion with Forseti. Matt may or may not remember it. Almost every Sumble for a few years, I would toast Forseti in the first round. And that was partly because of things I wanted to see happen in the world. At that time, this is about 8 to 10 years ago, there had been some falling outs with people that I was pretty close to, whole kindreds. A lot of people went different directions, and, some of them don't deserve sympathy, but a great many of them, went where their friends went. And, Forseti is a god of reconciliation and arbitration. And I felt drawn to Forseti because I truly believe, and I still believe now, that all of our folk should be Asatru, and that to be Asatru is to practice and worship in the Asatru Folk Assembly. More currently, I'm going to borrow from my wife and say that I have an affinity towards Freyr, and that's something that I think developed over time too, because I've kind of always been a wannabe farmer gardener. I'm not very good at it, but I keep trying. I like how the dirt feels in my hands, and I will continue to try to grow things from seed, whether or not I end up with any actual produce. If I end up with 3 seeds to try again next year, I'm happy enough. Katie's probably lying. She knows I'm pretty grumpy when that happens. But Nonetheless, I do think it's a really important thing for my soul and for my mental and spiritual well-being to try to tend the land. And I think that may come from the fact that many of my ancestors on my father's side, at least, were farmers. And, some of that is a missed opportunity of not spending enough time with my grandfather when I was younger. And quality time, I mean, he spoke fluent Norwegian. He was both a mechanic and a farmer. There's a lot of cool stuff I should have learned from him. I'm glad about the things I did learn, but Lord Freyr is definitely someone that is a God that I think is very important for me to intentionally foster a relationship and a devotion to. And then Witten Young, I will let you finish out this question, and I need to step away for just a minute, so don't ask me anything for a minute or two.
Copy that.
So when I first became Asatru, in a real way, practicing with a group and stuff, I was at a Yule event with my old kindred in North Carolina, and there was a lady there that was, and I might be misspeaking here, but I'm pretty sure she was a part of a theod, and she had a very theodish worldview. And she specifically asked me at some point, was I a Thorsman? And because I was ignorant, I answered her, no, I'm Asatru. So I mean, a lot like Matt and the rest of the panel, I don't like the word favorite. I have a different relationship with each of our gods and goddesses, and a lot of that's intentional. Tyler mentioned it, and so did Cliff, that it depends a lot on the moment or whatever. But we have so many in our gods. We have so many gods that you can't get to a close relationship with all of them all at one time. So a lot of us do this in stages, and a lot of it's like Mike said early on. It depends on what stage of life you're in. When I first came to Asatru, I was drawn to Odin, and that became Thor for a while, and for different reasons. But over the last few years, I've worked on my relationship with Heimdall, and I really appreciate my relationship with him. It's borne fruit in my life. He was the God I prayed to when I had a brush with death last year. He was the first God I prayed to. But no, my favorite gods are the Aesir, and my favorite goddesses are the Asatru.
All right. Well, so we've got a kind of a follow-up question on our equality question that happened over to the side. I got to go look exactly how it was phrased, but yet the patriarchy, men are better. That's one of the, people make knee-jerk reactions to stuff that are kind of, I don't know, born out of emotional trauma and not out of, fair, objective reasoning on stuff. So first, the patriarchy reference, I think that's kind of overdone. And I think the two flow together. So men are better. Well, nobody said that, but then it also begs the question, better at what? Better in what way? And there's a variety of different skill sets that all of us are, either to a greater degree or a lesser degree capable of. And it depends on what the context is and where that lives. Even taking the patriarchy at face value. And I think there's some truth to that. Yeah. Men tend to take more of a leadership role in most aspects of things. I think it tends to be more inherent to men's nature in a lot of ways. And I think we see that a lot in a healthy situation. But clearly that's not always the case, and it doesn't have to be some rigid point of doctrine, but it is something to acknowledge. It does tend to be a thing. But let's take that on its complete face value, even if that were the case, that complete patriarchy, male-controlled society, that still isn't necessarily a value judgment. It's a suitability for leadership judgment, perhaps. But I don't think that even in that situation, in and of itself, it implies that men are better at all things than women. And any of us using common sense knows that's not the case. There's many things that women are obviously much more better equipped to do than men are typically. But then it goes to there's individual women that are more or less good at the things that their gender is supposed to be good at, and individual men that are more or less good at things that their gender is supposed to be good at. That's really not the point of the AFA. And the thing is, all of these things have a context in a situation that you put them in. But the basic principle remains, there is not sameness. Very often, not equality doesn't always mean a judgment of better or worse, but often a judgment of different in a lot of ways, and different in ways that aren't necessarily equivalent, or certainly don't have to be equivalent. We would never interact, we deal with this all the time. The way you interact with people is different, and gender is certainly a big factor of that interaction. I think everyone on here interacts with women differently than they interact with men in most of, if not all, circumstances, if they're being fair with it. I think that's just natural and appropriate. Sometimes, is that a slight against the one or the other? Maybe. Is that a point of deference to the one or the other? Perhaps. Circumstances dictate that, and individuals dictate that. To put everybody in a box as this is better than that just defies the natural truth that we observe all around us. If I were to say men are better than women, you would point out all of the men that that are subpar, and you'd point out a bunch of outstanding examples of women that are clearly better than the men that you listed, and vice versa. And that never really goes anywhere, and it's unnatural in its construction. In the AFA, we like to let things sort themselves out as they would naturally, and we recognize strengths where they lie. We recognize leadership where we see it. We recognize ability where we see it and where it demonstrates itself, and then we support and celebrate that. So I hope that adds a little bit of clarity to that. We are joined by one of my cats, apparently.
She says hi to Tyler's cat.
Okay. Apparently there's show and tell of animals on the program at this point. Going back to a couple of questions. Oh, also, and I meant to do this a long time ago. Please forgive me because of my technical difficulties. GW Farnsworth bought us 5 coffees. It's a $25 donation, and we really appreciate that. So thank you. Back in the questions, sorry guys, I gotta go back and look at a couple of things. Oh, Wolf Throne asks, Matt, juice or natty? First, the fact that you would ask the question is complimentary, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Complete transparency, vast majority natty. I am on like a low dose TRT because I'm getting older, but just enough to keep me in like normal healthy male range. So nothing extravagant, certainly nothing before that, and nothing, that's not legally and readily available. No. Yeah, the fact that you would ask makes me feel good about the state of my physique as a man that just turned 43. So I appreciate that. That said, I would encourage men out there listening to this, as you are getting up in years, especially if you're over 40, if you got the insurance and it works out, get that tested out and see where your test levels are at. There's stuff you can do to get that in a normal spot. And we live in a day and age where that's kind of a concern, and it's something that we have the ability to work with going forward for health. So it's something to think about, guys. The next question I've got. This question is discussed at Sigrblót, but looking for more perspectives. How would you describe the difference between the Othala rune and the Odal version? Wings versus no wings. Daniel, what do you got to say about this?
There is no difference between the two, except for just the way they look. They represent the same concept. Ancestral inheritance. I heard this. Matter of fact, I want to say one of the last times I was a guest on here, that question came up, and I really liked a explanation that Cliff had mentioned about the iconography of the rune, whether with the feet or without, or with the wings or without. That the ing portion of the rune representing like kind of the homestead or the kin fence, and the legs that split off from it at the bottom there kind of represent the gate that needs to be guarded. But as far as it pertains to Rachel's question, it's just a aesthetic difference.
Yeah, it really is. That's all it is. It's kind of a development of that particular runic sigil over time. It's more serifed than winged, I guess, exaggerated serifed, but looks cooler. I think that's about the only difference. The meaning has always been the same, no matter what the picture is that's been drawn. So yeah, that's really all there is to that one. But also a Rachel question is kind of a different question, but I think a really deep one. How do we as an organization deal with the effects on our group hamingja with the loss or negative actions of members? We will throw this one to Svan, who just joined us.
Oh, what are we doing? Dang it! I knew you guys were gonna get me on like as soon as I walked in.
So this is what I do. Rachel wants to know. Rachel wants to know, how do we as an organization deal with the effects on our group hamingja with the loss or negative actions of members? And I wanted your thoughts on this.
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, I think that hamingja is something that can be manipulated for the better or the worse, through deed, through the manifestation of will, or the creation of weird that will become orlog. So hamingja is again a result, or something that happens after things are done, whether they're good or whether they're bad. So if you're speaking about, say, negative deeds specifically, really the only way that you can rectify the negative is by altering with and keeping aligned with good deeds. And how do we specifically do that? I mean, I think one of the biggest things is that we continually kind of see the separation of people. There are people that their negative hamingja kind of filters themselves out in a way. So sometimes I wonder if even some of the stuff that they do that's kind of seen as negative is bad, in the sense that in the long run, the people that are able to rectify negative actions and deeds stay longer, and the people that don't always end up kind of weaving themselves out, shattering themselves off. But yeah, I kind of apply that to the individual as well as the group, the whole of us, is that the only way you can rectify from the negative actions that may have tainted and brought about a draining of your hamingja is to immediate action to correct and to try to fix or to maintain and rectify. And I think that we do that. The positive stays and the negative will create blemishes and marks, but it always ends up kind of flagging off, and the good remain to kind of keep rectifying it. Is it tiresome? Is it annoying? Yeah, but is it necessary? Yeah, I think it's absolutely necessary.
So this is something that was kind of explained to me early on when I was studying to be a Gothi in, I don't know, sometime in 2011, I think. In a way, your hamingja serves as a type of spiritual armor. And you build it up so that it can take hits. You don't unnecessarily expose it or mistreat it. But life is messy, and people and groups that emerge with a completely pristine hamingja do so through, trying to hide in a closet somewhere. When you go out into the world, things happen. When you're a group involving other people, people are characterized by their imperfection, and especially in the wolf age in which we live, our folk, in the state of soul sickness that we find ourselves, are all too often characterized by dysfunction and maladies that would harm hamingja. In order for us to try to raise our folk up and heal our broken folk, it means exposing ourselves as a group to some really broken people. We do our best to try to make them better, and sometimes they fall short of that. So as a group, to protect our hamingja, we try to, first of all, fix what's broken. If we have people that are bringing the hamingja down, we try to get them to repair their behavior to make it better. If we have people that are so abhorrent in their behaviors, then eventually we may need to break with those people for the protection of, our hamingja. But also, we lose people. People betray us. The longer you're involved and the more you devote your heart to this, the more susceptible you are to seeing and being really hurt by the actions of members that go astray or act dishonorably. But one of the best things to strengthen our hamingja is all those members that don't. All those members that stay loyal, all those members that with consistency and consistent right action build that hamingja greater than the sum of its parts by us doing it together as a folk, as a people, as a church. And that's one of those things. Question came up specifically about Symbol. I was like, well, man, I'm going to go to my first national event. I'm going to do all this stuff. What if there's people there that are dirtbags? What if there's people I don't know, and maybe, they lead these double lives, or they're bad people or whatever. And my mentor at the time told me, he said, yeah, that's true. But Matt, you're going to get to go and stand in Symbol with Steve McNallen and with Sheila and with Gothi Thorgren and with these heroes of our folk. And that raises my hamingja tremendously. So the best thing that we can do collectively to fix our situation materially and spiritually, you can't undo wrong that's been done, but you can outpace it with good deeds and with accomplishments. Best thing that we can do to wash away or to dilute bad deeds of the past is by overwhelming good deeds and overwhelming victories and successes. One of the other things that's a big hamingja builder, and there's a lot to hamingja, and I think we use it as a catch-all for like spiritual reputation, but we're judged all of the time by our ancestors and by our gods. And one thing that is a huge boost in that arm is when we succeed in spite of people that do wrong by us, in spite of people that betray us, in spite of people that don't live up to it. If those of us that do succeed, even when others try to bring us down, we raise our hamingja. And what's more, when we lose people or people succumb to their sickness, if those people come back later because they've fixed themselves or they've allowed us to help them get fixed, that I believe has an exponential effect on our hamingja. So there's a spiritual, I mean, I think the term spiritual battle is overused, but there is a spiritual balance and reckoning that is always being done. And through perseverance and victory, in spite of those who have done us wrong, or in spite of betrayal, I think that, that adds an extra value to those victories and an extra value to that perseverance. And, I believe that our gods judge us in that way, and that our ancestors judge us in that way, because they see the truth. They know the truth of what's going on. And they see that. So pushing on through struggle, I think, is a hamingja boost greater than hamingja loss by people who have been fraudulent or dishonest. Got a question from Immortal Rising Comic Book. I'm sorry, I'm new. Are y'all based in North Carolina? No, we're not. But for this episode is, we're doing a special episode just on Þórshof district. And that district is based in North Carolina because in Linden, North Carolina is where we have Þórshof, the Second Hof of the Asatru Folk Assembly. Nick, I don't know if you have something handy, but if you want to throw up a graphic of our beautiful Hoff to the Thunderer, that would be cool. But yeah, it's in Linden, North Carolina. But we have people in this district that are from all over the place. If when I call on you, you just say where you're located, that would be cool and give some perspective. Joe.
I'm in Hartville, Ohio, which is northeast Ohio, about an hour south of Cleveland.
Daniel.
I am from Camden, South Carolina, which is almost right in between Columbia, South Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina.
Cliff.
From Erie, Pennsylvania, or at least that's where I live now, and we travel all over the place.
Katie.
Same.
Swan.
Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Smooth Tyler.
I am in southwestern New Hampshire, so I have easy access to Vermont, New Hampshire, obviously, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maine, Rhode Island, anywhere in New England. So,
Mike.
I'm also in Northeast Ohio, roughly a half an hour south of Cleveland. But like Tyler said, I have access to Pennsylvania, western part of Pennsylvania, and eastern part of Indiana, and also West Virginia and northern Kentucky. Not too far away.
John. Okay, John looks really creepy, and he is still muted. So, Bearded Tyler.
I live about halfway in between Asheville North Carolina and the border with South Carolina, so I've got pretty easy access to Tennessee, both the Carolinas, Georgia. The majority of our events are in the eastern part of Tennessee, close to the Carolina line.
Producer Nick.
Had to remove somebody in order for me to come on because there's a cap of 10. But I am in north central Tennessee, about halfway in between Nashville and Knoxville, just outside Sigerheim.
All right, John, round 2.
I am looking and being creepy in central Indiana. I'm from Indianapolis, right in the middle of the state.
So watch out if you're in Indiana.
Find you.
All right. So, but that said, that was just being fun because of what we got on the program. We have members in 48 of the United States. We've got members in 14 countries. I'm talking with you guys right now based in Reno, Nevada. And technically, we are based out of California. That's where we got our federal 501c3 and our first Hoff, which we did a show on 4 weeks ago, or 2 weeks. What am I thinking? 2 weeks ago. I apologize. Is Odin's Hoff, and that's in Brownsville, California, which is in Northern California. But like I said, we've got, we're going to do 2 more of these episodes on our 2 other Hoff districts. As you can see, here's the map. We got them split up into 4 different districts, one for each of our Hoffs. And this is working on getting new Hoffs all of the time. So we have a lot of really good coverage. I'm not sure where you're located. I see over on the side that you were asking because you're looking for a group of people. You should really consider joining if you go to runestone.org. That is the spot where you can do that. Chances are we have folks in your area, and if you have a question, you can ask over in the comments section or whatnot. We've got a number of our folk builders who are in the chat room, as well as any of us here that could tell you who to go to if we knew, kind of exactly where you're located. That said, anybody listening to the sound of our voices, if you are not an AFA member, well, first, if you are an AFA member, awesome. We're glad to have you. Secondly, if you're not an AFA member, why not? If you are a heterosexual white person and you are desiring a relationship with our ICER, I would encourage you to try to join the Asatru Folk Assembly, submit an application, and we would love to have you join us in the truly amazing things that we're doing together. So please give that thought and consideration. Question: if the gods of many of our forefathers are Irish or Scots-Irish, do they fall more in the background now? I came home through the Celtic gods. Do we forsake the historical Irish festivals? Cliff.
So a few different things about that. The Celtic, the Irish, the Scottish, and other divinities are expressions of Aryan divinity. We believe in the Asatru Folk Assembly that the best and most correct expression of Aryan divinity is the Aesir. That said, being familiar with and knowing the names and practices of the gods that our ancestors held dear is something of great value. We don't believe in syncretism, but there is overlap for sure between the different pantheons of Aryan divinity all throughout Europe and in some cases even beyond. Anywhere that our people went, there our gods were.
There you go. I mean, that's kind of the short answer. understanding the gods in a different way, I guess, would be what I would say. And this is a thing, and I know that it is tempting and satisfying for us to have very, very clear answers on everything. But it's more important and more valuable to have honest answers on things. And the honest answer is, it gets messy when you try to compare Aryan pantheons and find a one-for-one example of what this god is in that pantheon versus the next. Sometimes that's very obvious and very easy to do. Sometimes it's a lot more convoluted. But surely we believe our gods are real. The fact that they are real means that they are our gods. And when we talk about them creating us as a people, that means that they are at least as old as we are as a people. And so if you trace the migrations of our people over time, certainly these gods didn't, stop being gods or become a bunch of different gods, or like it just doesn't logically bear out that when our people crossed over into a different valley and start a different city and begin to talk a little bit differently, that the identities of our gods completely change. But over periods of isolation, the relationship that our gods developed with our ancestors was very different depending on place and time. And that doesn't need to be a hurdle, even though I know that it may seem like that when you just start out. In the same way that, folks at work know you differently than your parents know you, than your wife knows you, than your children know you, then if you're, involved in a sport or a hobby, then those people know you. All of those things are you and are true expressions of you. But the relationship's very different depending upon each of those individuals that you have that relationship with. Similar to our gods relating to our ancestors as they migrated, as different environmental and other factors shaped those relationships in really different ways over the course of, thousands of years. So no, it's not about not worshiping the Celtic gods. It's about viewing and relating to the Aryan gods under the Norse expression as the Aesir. And that seems more complex than it is when you actually start building your relationships in those terms.
If I might, sometimes I like to describe it as, our cousin folk within the Aryan family, and anyone who has a blood cousin in life knows that if you have a grandfather, you have different relationships, maybe a different name and different stories to tell about that grandfather. He might be pappy to one of you and granddad to the other. You might have taught one of you football and the other one checkers, but he's the same man.
Absolutely. And time to make note. Chris Lucat donated $25 to the Njordshof Fund. Thank you very much. For anybody that is curious, and this is relevant to, I was going to say most. It's a more even split than it was when we started out the program. All right, Nick, and I think you got the graphics. So here's the deal. Here's what we look like on our payoff of Njordshof. We have made tremendous progress in the past few months due to your guys' generosity.
Add $35.
35. All right.
I haven't added the last 10 you told me about yesterday.
Goodness gracious. All right. So, but that said, Let this count as your note, Nick. Please update this with the most recent 25 as well. But that said, this is moving ever closer, and this is our first step towards getting our next Hoff. And Katie mentioned it earlier. That's going to be Frey's-Hoff. And Frey's-Hoff, the plan as it is now is to have that in Western Pennsylvania or Eastern Ohio. We've got a sweet spot of like was it Cleveland, the one up by the lakes? You guys, all your cities start with C. All right, Cleveland's the one up by the lakes. So Cleveland, Erie, Pittsburgh. If there was a triangle that was slightly bigger than each of those, that's kind of the sweet spot, but it's not a guarantee. It's just an idea of where we're trying to target Frey's-Hoff. But that's when we'd be splitting the Þórshof district. But that's still in the future. In order for us to get there, we need to first pay off Njordshof. So you guys have been super generous. We appreciate that. Anybody who would like to do that money currently, there you go. We've got a link right there. Also, if you are listening to this at runestone.org, there are several different links in there directing you to donate towards this effort. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate the generosity. It's how we're able to do nice things, and you guys continue to impress. That said, we can move on to the next question here. And Katie, I have no idea when you asked that question back at 7:08. I don't know what you wanted to interject, but feel free to interject it now.
We were talking about the patriarchy and equal and all that stuff, and I just wanted to add, as the only female currently on the call right now, that from the female perspective, as far as the patriarchy goes, I'm pretty sure all of our ladies in leadership are not raging feminists, so we like the way things are. I'm also going to say that as far as between men and women go, something we're talking about at Sigrheim this weekend is that men and women are partners in all things. That means that sometimes women are stronger and sometimes men are stronger. We all have our own things that we're good at, and we all have our own things that we are literally built differently to handle better than the other sex. So equal is not really a thing, but being a partner or being equal insofar as we all have a role to play, for sure. I'm actually really impressed with myself for remembering that that's what I wanted to talk about however long ago.
Excellent. And that goes for any of you guys. If you guys need to interject something or whatever, I am much more likely to see you on the screen. Or if you need to, feel free to jump in. A lot of these questions I don't necessarily look at because I'm looking in chronological order, and we are answering questions. Right now, the one I'm about to have us answer is from 6:49. So that's almost an hour ago. All right. Question, guys, as far as us being American now, do you all feel as though the original settlers, us, hold blood in the land, and that this country is possibly to say, okay, that it's possible to say this country is our homeland now, as far as we do? I'm gonna go around and I don't know. Daniel, what are your thoughts? Go for it.
I have ancestors' bones in this land going back since its settlement. My ancestors were among the earliest settlers of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. In fact, what is now known as Coney Island was originally owned by my very first American ancestor. So yeah, I say this often. I've said it during Alfar Bloat and other ritual action that involved our ancestors. Wherever Aryan feet are is Aryan land.
So I was going to go around, but I don't need to. That mic drop kind of says it all.
I've got something though.
That's the thing. Our people.
If I could, this
No,
must
I'm
be
just
said.
playing with you, Joe. Please go ahead.
This could be debatable, but if you look, it could even go further back. Look into the Clovis and Solutrean peoples. There's actual physical evidence of us being here far before Native Americans, as you call them, and this is even predating Leif Erikson. So look into the Clovis and Solutrean peoples. They found Michigan copper. You can I don't know how they do it exactly. We have to look it up, but you can basically find what copper came from what part of the world in any part of the world. And they have found Michigan copper in, I think, Celtic burial mounds predating any time that supposedly Christopher Columbus or anyone was here. So if he's interested, look into that. This very well could be a very old homeland of ours. But yeah, I just had to say that.
No, absolutely. And I think that's something that's fascinating. I wonder how much we can learn about that as the science develops and we discover more things, but there's a lot to that as far as pre-Columbian white folks in North America and I suppose South America for that matter. It's an interesting thing to ponder, but the greater point that I think Daniel brought up, our people are explorers and conquerors since our inception. Wherever we go and establish ourselves, we have the right of struggle and victory to claim it as ours and to, regard it as such. We have, I don't know how long everyone on the call has been in the United States, and it may not. This is as relevant to any of you who are listening to this wherever you find yourself as it is to those of us in the United States. Once you're in a place and you establish yourself there, especially once you're burying your dead there and, you've been there generationally, you have as much right as any to call that your spot and to stand up for it and own it and treat it as such. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with suggesting that, the land where your ancestors are is your homeland. A lot of us look to Europe as our homeland, but our people migrated into Europe from the steppe, from Hyperborea at the pole, from wherever you want to talk about. There was migrations all of the time. It's not just one set point that our people are stuck in to where that's where they can call home. And I think that's a really important concept for us to own and be proud of. It's been a narrative by people who want to hold us down and diminish us, to speak poorly of our ancestors going about and winning and being successful and exploring and conquering, and just not just over other peoples, but carving out of nature, untamed, uncivilized wilderness and making it their home thousands of miles from where they started. That's a source of pride and a testament of pride for our folk. And it was and always has been up until, about 50 years ago. So there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's a fundamentally important thing to put out there and to stand by. So this is a question, and I will get to everybody on this. I know you guys are not all getting a lot of mic time, and I apologize for that. It's kind of the nature of one of these programs. It's a good problem to have, and it's cool, but I know some of you guys are underutilized. So question for you all: do you ever leave out offerings inside your home for house spirits? John, do you is that something you do?
Have done, do not always do. I don't even have a rhyme or reason to it. I don't have anything more astute to say. Sometimes Sometimes we'll do it. It's a nice thing to do. My children are older now, but when they're younger, it's a nice thing to do to sort of acclimate them to the feeling that if there is a thing in the house, that it's friendly and not malicious. But certainly I have done it. It's not something I engage in with any particular regularity.
All right. What about you, Joe?
Same thing, not in a regular fashion, but from what I understand, and I've been told by very, very young members of this very previous members of this organization, but there's a young girl that is upstairs. We had a moot one time, and a small child said, "Can I play with the little girl that's upstairs?" And I said, "We do not have a little girl here." So I leave her root beer and candy and ribbons and stuff like that, because not only he, but other older members and many other people have said that they have experienced the presence of a little girl in my home. So I do leave her little things here and there. I don't have any palpable experience with her, but if she's there, I give her a little bit of respect. And as far as everything else goes, like, I leave a lot to the land whites because I try to cultivate my land a lot. So I have a nice little dead stump back there that I like to leave off. I leave offerings for her, for land whites, and other house spirits from time to time, but not in any severe regularity.
What about you, Mike?
Nothing indoors. Like Joe said, I have a stump outside, and I always make sure to share some of our meal that we have here. I hosted Sigrblót over the weekend, so before we ate, I selected what seemed to be the choicest looking of the smorgasbord of food that we had, and I set that aside, and I always will leave that out, and I've done that for a very, very long time. I learned a long time ago inside of our Vey, and we had what was seemingly a fantastic bloat. Everyone was uplifted, and we had a tribal banner that one of the gentlemen was holding, and just out of nowhere, it almost seemed like when a child tugs on your leg really fast and trying to get your attention, mommy, 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 or daddy, 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 only it was happening on our banner, and it just popped off of the pole that it was on, and we all kind of stopped and looked. And when we left, I was trying to ascertain what that was, and I smacked myself in the head, and I said, we didn't make an offering for the land Batir, and that was 20-something years ago, and I haven't failed to do so ever since. So always something for the land Batir. Absolutely.
What about you, Daniel?
On occasion, not with any regularity, but we've experienced some stuff in this house since I've been here. It's a pretty old house, but we try to, at least whenever we're if we're hosting something here at the house, we make offerings to land whites and the house whites. But I wanted to add that something we got away from doing, and I would like to bring back, is at Þórshof, we used to prepare a plate and a glass of beer for Terry Rumpf in the fellowship hall. And as a matter of fact, I believe the anniversary of his death is upon us. So usually, often at Sigrblót, we make an offering to him. He was a devotee of Tyr, so it seemed like the right thing to do.
Cliff.
Yes, we do. With semi-regularity or consistent irregularity, but we do make offerings to house whites, to land whites, to Yule whites and other winter whites. I know a tradition among Norwegians when moving from homestead to homestead or house to house, and presumably some of them still do it when they move from apartment to apartment, is to invite the housewhites in particular to come with you, and you would leave a shoe out for them to hitch a ride, so to speak. The landwhites, of course, are tied to a particular place, maybe a field or a stream or a mountain or something like that. But housewhites, I think, are transportable and are something that if you cultivate a good relationship with them and get a decent two-way level of respect. It's not worship when you're dealing with any white. I don't think it is a lot more building up a cohesion, kind of announcing yourselves to them and making sure that they understand that you are, that you are Asatru folk and that you are on the side of order and the side of Odin and on the side of ordered nature, and that your presence there will be to their benefit, or at least not to their detriment. And many good things can come from that. And like John pointed out, it's a wonderful thing to do if you have children. It is a fun way to engage them in Asatru. Katie and I are fortunate. Our kids are pretty engaged anyway. But I think part of that is because we've developed this cult of whites in our household. To the extent that, we take some of the colloquial names and apply them to whites. When I speak to Owen about winter whites, there's the Yule white, who is the gift bringer. And Katie can talk about this tradition more because she really owns it. So I'll let her do that. But also, we have named other winter whites like Jack Frost, just because it's a name that makes sense. It's a name that our ancestors used to describe where the ice, the frosting on the windows comes from. I mean, yes, it's condensation that freezes, but it's we can feel it in the seasons. You can feel when the spirit of a season arrives. When you get that first whiff of autumn air, you know that something has changed. And I do think that there are personalities and entities associated with those things, and we try to maintain a good relationship with them. It's just like trying to maintain good relationships with your neighbors or with animals. You want to be a good neighbor to everything that's around you.
What about you, Tyler? Smooth Tyler.
Yeah. So, in terms of like everyday things, our majority of everyday is we have our ancestral altar and our God altar in our dining room, and that's the majority of our daily practice. But as far as house whites go, my wife has set up a bunch of idols around the house, guarding the doors and stuff like that. So specifically like offering them blessings and stuff is quite rare, but acknowledging them and their existence through the idols at the doors and stuff like that is, definitely something we witness every day and acknowledge via those idols. So.
It's not fair. I'm going to start household things. I'm going to start alternating my Ericksons here. Svan, what about you?
Mainly around Yule is the only time I really do it. Everything that we put in the Hlaut bowl usually gets taken outside. It doesn't stay overnight. I live in the South, and ants and things are a real concern. But during Yule, that's a different story because it's cold, and so stuff out for the Yule elf or the Yule white is more done in the latter half of the year. Otherwise I take it outside.
I'm Bearded Tyler.
So for the house whites, when we purchased our home back in 2020, we left some offerings in the corners of the home, also outside for the landvetir. But typically, when we do the rituals at our home altar, we'll use a libation, and that libation will remain on our altar overnight. Or there have been occasions where we'll leave it in there until all the liquid kind of evaporates, and there's just a little bit of, I don't know what you call it, in the bottom of the bowl, and we leave that out. There are times when we will do, like on a birthday or an anniversary for one of our ancestors. Typically for them, we will use milk. Milk will go bad. So after 12 hours or so, we'll take it outside. I have carved in a tree that we have outside the front door here. I have a fir tree, and the boys and I carved an Ansu's rune in the trunk of that tree, and that is where we give our offerings. Whatever's in the bowl, we put it out there. Typically, though, during the Yule time, we will give offerings to the whites, not just the leavings that are in a cloth bowl, but we will make an offering to the whites at that time. Also, I hunt on my property that I live on. We have an intimate relationship with our herd of deer here. We feed them all year round. I've got apple trees and such. So there will be times when we go outside and we'll make a pile of apples out of our apple trees and such, and we'll dedicate part of that to the land whites to ask them for a good hunt. And the herd looks good. I'd like to harvest one. Then we would harvest a deer, and we would offer part of that to Lord Uller and part to the land whites as well. So that's about the extent of my practice with the whites.
And she is somewhere. I don't know where Katie went, but I was going to ask her if she had anything to add about Erickson household house white interaction.
So coming from a Thadish background, there were a lot of like superstitions about house whites. One of the things we always did, more for the land whites, for the land here than the house white, but after you leave an offering, you're always supposed to back away 3 or 4 steps before you turn around and walk away, because the land whites, while we work with them, they are still the land whites. It was just like a respect thing, and I still kind of like that. I still do that, and I kind of try to get my kids to do it with me, but they don't really. They just run. They don't really care. They're not going to back up three steps first. But as far as in the house goes, Cliff already covered it. When Swan Erickson gave us a really beautiful dragon bell when we got married. And we saved it, and we have it hanging in the threshold between our kitchen and our living room right now, because they're basically the same room. It's just got an archway in between. And every night before bed, except for when we get off track like we have the last couple of weeks because we've been super busy, we each take a turn ringing that bell and hailing the house white. No one will often say something like, house white full of might, please keep the nightmares away tonight. And he'll ring the bell and we'll all say, hail the house white. Just something really cute like that. And it gets them used to having to say a hail on their own. And the house white is easy. It's the spirit that kind of lives in our house and helps us out or makes things complicated for us. And we do leave offerings for him in a special spot in the house, and we always check in the morning to see if it's gone. Usually it is when we remember to move it outside. But but yeah, no, it's just, I think we're in the young children stage of life right now, since we have young children, and that's where a lot of our focus is. And as I think it was Tyler said earlier, having young kids And the house white is a really easy way to get them engaged. I mean, obviously they like to hail the gods, and Thor is Odin's favorite, followed very closely by Odin, but not quite, still Thor. Anyways, whatever. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, house whites are cool.
All right. So, no, you're good. I figure it'd be good to get because we're still on the.
Nick wants to go.
Oh, there he is. All right, Nick. What do you do?
Sorry, we got to play this ring around the rosy merry-go-round thing because there's 11 of us and StreamYard has a 10-person cap. But so actually, I'm pretty much going to repeat what Folk Builder Tyler, Bearded Tyler, said. Mostly, it's just that leaving when I do offerings on my altar, leaving those out with the express kind of mental understanding that offering is going towards the gods as well as the whites. And the whites probably have the more, I don't know, quick access to it. But I did want to add, because she mentioned it in the chat, out at Sigerheim, we did install, I guess you could say, / dedicate a house white or a land white's house in the woods. They put that in on Saturday, and then in the evening after Stumble went out and dedicated that. So a little, I don't know, home, abode, shrine thing for the land whites out there. So that's pretty cool. And I'm going to actually remove myself and add Tyler back so he could say something about it, because he was a little bit more present with that.
Okay, I'm on the spot then. Okay. So what we did there is that one of our members had constructed out of kind of like a birdhouse type deal, small abodes for the land whites. And earlier in the day, we had taken that house up there to the graveyard halfway up the hill, and we placed it there. And what we did after Stumble is we went up there and kind of held a small the ritual to the land Vatir, and we told them, there's going to be a lot of improvements upon the land here, and how we've already begun to make improvements and to make our presence known. And that we thought it was important that they had a place where they would be undisturbed, and where they could find their the refuge, and a place where we could honor them, and that they could kind of call their own for a while, So I'm not sure if that is all that Nick wanted me to talk about, but that's kind of the gist of it. It's a small thing that we did for the Lambeteer.
Good deal. While we're, before we get too far away from it, and it relates to the equality question. I have a question over there in the comments. I have an interesting question. If you had no control of being born, or what race you are and what gods you belong to, then do you agree that all other gods and races are just as powerful as ours? And he has a caveat here. I'm not looking for the run-of-the-mill answer of we encourage all people to seek their own ancestors' gods. So I get it. That is a convenient way to, I don't know, bypass the question, but not out of, it's because that's not really our concern. That's one of the things. First, no, I don't believe that other races and other races' gods are equally powerful or equal to our gods, because we've stated before, we don't believe in equality. That's not a thing. Of course, that's not the case. By saying that does not mean that they are better. It does not mean that they are worse. It does not mean, it's not any kind of indictment against any group of people or any pantheon of deities. It is a statement that I don't believe in equality in any sense ever amongst any two things. No two dogs are the same. No two cats are the same. Two of the same book that are printed off the same printing press, sitting next to each other in the same run, are not exactly the same. There is some degree of difference between them in some small, if unrecognizable way. There is no such thing as equality. And that applies that way as well. And as far as, and I know that that's the easy answer, but no, it's not the point of the AFA to analyze other races of people's comparative value to ours, or other people's gods' comparative value to ours. We recognize the existence of other races of people, and that those races of people have their own unique interests, makeup, and destinies that they want to pursue, and that they have just as much, right to want to pursue those things as we do. Sometimes that puts us in opposition to one another. Sometimes it doesn't affect that. Sometimes perhaps even there's cooperation between one another. Also, it's not our position to judge other races' racial gods. That's not, it's not up to us, and it's not the mission of the Asatru Folk Assembly. It's up to them to judge the value of their gods or not. We do believe in the existence or the potential existence of their deities. So nothing we intend to do has anything to negate that or to take away from those deities' dignity, except for, and this is an important caveat, when one of their core principles is the elimination of ours. And I say that in the sense of Abrahamic faiths believe that our gods are devils, or don't exist, or are demons, or should be destroyed. And absolutely, we stand in firm opposition to that. Other than that, that's the real answer. It's entirely up to those group of people to rise, to fall, to succeed, or to fail, to reach their potential or to miss their potential. And whatever the result of that at any given time makes them inherently not equal to us, perhaps superior to us, perhaps not, depending on how they play the hand that they were dealt. And as you mentioned, we don't have that say of where we find ourselves in life. Of course we don't. We all have an opportunity to achieve great things and to do great deeds. But no, nothing in existence is equal. It's a lie and a delusion that makes us all weaker for pretending that's the case.
If I might, I think it's worth mentioning that the point of our relationship with our gods is not how powerful they are. It is that they are our kin, that they are our most ancient ancestors. And so, if there was anyone out there who was trying to shop around for the most powerful god, that is wrong-headed. That's not the point in our relationship with them. It's not like going to the toy store, going down to the Transformer aisle and checking out their power matrix on the back of the box to see which one is coolest. It is a lot more serious than that. And, whenever anyone approaches their divinities, whether they're of our race or of another race. They need to make sure that they're basing it in a sincerity and are honestly trying to find and worship their natural gods, the gods and goddesses of their ancestors who created them and created their people. And I mean, I'll be blunt. Anything other than that is wrong and kind of cucked.
Agreed.
I would just like to add quickly too. It's more of a basis in truth of what you'll get out of it and how possible these connections are to achieve. So, for example, if I wanted to get into Shintoism, I'm not going to get anything out of it. I don't have that culture behind me. I don't have that connection to that spiritual history. And that's the bottom line, is that we have a direct line back to our gods and our ancestors worshiping, and the continuation of that gift cycle over long periods of time. And those delineations matter. And that's what makes it significant to stick to, the gods of your folk.
Well, also, when you're so focused on what another race and religion is doing, it begs the question for me, is it resentment and some sort of inferiority complex? Let's focus on what others are doing, because otherwise you'll never find yourself. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that also. I'll share your go that you've said it many times on VNS episodes and also in person. The AFA is not here to be in opposition to anyone, anything, or any other gods that may or may not exist. We are here for our folk. We are here to have a relationship with the Aesir. We are here to build. We are not here to destroy or take anyone else down. That's not the path to success. We're here to build a strong foundation for our folk and, to guide our people back home where we all know that they belong with us, and having that relationship with the Aesir. And as Witten Erickson said, they are our most ancient ancestors. They are our blood. That is why we are the Asatru Folk Assembly, folk being the key there. So it doesn't really concern us what other gods may or may not be out there. We're concerned with ours and our connection to them and our folk.
Well, I would say too, personally, I think that any god that is known to a people is probably real. I mean, I think that Ra is a real god. I think that Jehovah is a real god. I think that Shiva is a real god, but I don't think that they're our god, and it's not a power competition. Now, made up modern gods like the flying spaghetti monster are BS, but ancient gods that have been worshipped by, particular peoples and that are inextricably linked to their histories, those are real entities at a minimum.
All right. Svan, is the Holy Trinity inspired from the Aryan tripartite?
I believe it is. If you ask a is it a Trinitarian Christian, which is most Protestants and Catholics and Orthodoxy, they would say, no, that's not true. But they're kind of biased. The biggest thing to remember is in the book of Matthew, after Jesus is dead, the disciples who say he is resurrected and talking to them. So by this time, Saul of Tarsus, who Christians know him as Paul, and Simon, who Christians know him as Peter, they're basically changing the game. They're going outside. They're not trying to convince other Jews that Yeshua is the Messiah of Yahweh. They're going to start going out, and that's when they, Jesus or Yeshua says to them, go out and, bless and convert the world, the nations, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And I think that caused a problem because up until that moment, Judaism really was like strictly monotheistic. The Messiah placement was not seen as 100% connected to Yahweh. It was always kind of like a prophet position. The Christians made that prophet position into a bipartisanship of divinity. And then many years later, almost 400 years later, finally the dust settled. So between, I would say, after the first 100 years and 400 years in Europe, there were wars fought over this, and Christians killed Christians all over the place because they could not agree, and these councils were getting together, and it was all because of this statement that was passed down to them by Saul of Tarsus and Simon. They said, in the name of the Father and the Son and in the Holy Spirit. And I think that, again, the Holy Spirit itself was the covenant that was kept between the Israelites and Yahweh, but they construed that because I think innately, being Aryans, being of European descent, they needed to construct a Trinity because it is where all Aryans are. It is the footprint that you can find and heavily lean in on every Aryan branch and see it clear as day. And so I'm not surprised that it came. And if you ask around, again, most Christians are Trinitarians and they're going to say, no, it wasn't like that. It was already established, but that's not the case at all. The Arian Christians, which are from Arius, they actually argued that it was a Trinitarian, bipartitarian, I don't know. It was a dual situation there. And that wasn't, commonly agreed on. So yeah, I do believe it was heavily influenced, but in a way that I think a lot of things that we do today are heavily influenced is through our blood, the metagenetics of our people. People try to say that there's some sort of disingenuousness because there's like gaps of perhaps usage or traditions aren't, that they're broken in some way. No, the traditions aren't unbroken. They're in our blood. They can't be broken. They're just resurrected again. It's like saying that, the seeds of a plant are invalid because they're no longer growing at the time of the tree that bore that seed. The seeds are invalid growing out because the plant that produced it is no longer around. That's not the case. They're united. I also wanted to comment a little bit on that last question. I didn't get a chance to. I hope that's a clean answer to one. And I was wondering if I could comment a little bit on that about other gods. One of the things I think that we really need to do, and this is from my personal point, is I believe that my gods created us in our world. This is our world. And Heimdall created the folk specifically. And my concern outside of that for any other point or proclamation of any other people as to how powerful their gods are or what they have is entirely on them and not of my concern. So are we equal in the possibility of making those proclamations and having that worldview? Yes, I think that all people all over the world can see the divine through their own eyes in their own way. That is one thing we all share. But are we equal, and does the value of other gods have the same value as my gods to me? Absolutely not. Nor does, anybody could come in and say that Yahweh is more powerful than your gods or the flying spaghetti monster is more power. I would, equally laugh at both of them just because everything that's built around in my trough to the gods is the entirety of everything structured together. The only answers I don't have, sometimes I don't have answers. some like my kids ask, did the gods create other people? And I say, I don't know. I know how they created my people, but I don't know what that was about. And that's for the gods, not for me. And I left it alone. And they understood that. They said, okay, well, we have our story. We know where we came from because they told us through the first storytellers, through Kvasir, through Heimdall. So all the way back. And that's really all that matters. And I think a lot of people have a hard time digesting that when they see one sun that we all share the same sun. Yes, but the sun is very different all throughout the world. The sun is different to you in the desert as it is opposed to, say, in the north and in the mountains. And again, it's that relationship and what it may be. But my concern isn't for others in relation to the way I interconnect with divinity. So I just wanted to shoot that in there. Everyone was giving good answers, and I was like, maybe I'll sit on it, but.
All right. So Cliff, if you could sub for me again and go around the circle, the next question is, do you bless every meal you eat, or do you only bless the meal blessing for dinner? Could you go around and talk to everybody about their meal blessing traditions? And I'm going to run real quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah, of course. I'll go first. So in my household, we do our best to bless every supper or dinner, depending on where you are, our family meal together. I think it would be great to bless every meal, but I don't know if anyone who's completely honest actually does that. Someone somewhere along the way ate a peanut without blessing it or something like that. But it's a very good practice. I know, right? It's fun. It's trouble. But I think it's a very good practice. It's an ideal to strive for. I think for families in particular, it is a really important thing, first just to have the dinner table and to have dinner at the dinner table together as a unit. That's a very valuable thing. And once you're doing that, it makes sense to recognize, our gods and our ancestors and our folk and where that food comes from. Everyone, I think, probably has some different meal blessings that they do. I know of several. I know which one I prefer. Katie and I prefer different ones, so our kids get to hear it kind of alternate back and forth. But let's go to Joe next. Joe, do you do that?
I'll be honest, I'm a slacker. I'm single, don't have a family, unfortunately. So basically what I do is I thank them for a wide variety of things on a regular basis. I don't particularly bless meals. It's as simple and succinct as that. But I do thank them and try to bless other actions and things that I do. But no, I don't bless meals. Barely ever, unless we're having a special occasion.
All right. What about you, Mike?
Similar to Joe, I'm a single guy, so I live alone. I don't generally bless what I consider more, mundane meals. Kind of rush home from work and take the dog out and shove something in my face, and but certainly whenever I'm performing any kind of rite, I always say a few words, and then if it's something that's a little larger, one of our holy tides, I will bless the meal then. But I do agree with you that it's a good practice to be in. It's just yet another element that you can add that can only strengthen the bonds, between your ancestors and yourself and the gods and the land whites. And it's always a good idea to thank the food that you're about to eat, because something there gave its life for your nourishment. So it's certainly something that I want to make a part of my daily life. At work is a little more difficult when you're eating lunch, but you know, you don't have to make a big production out of it either. You know, be something in a hushed whisper because the intention is there. So,
Hey, John, how about you?
We are a lonely lot here in northwestern Þórshof district. I too am single and am typically, you know, eating a burrito in my car or something for supper. So I do not do very many meal blessings. I like the idea of it. You know, certainly if you're a family, young children, a wife, I mean, it's a fantastic thing to do. Frankly, even a lot of our moots that we have here monthly, you know, we get a fairly good turnout most of the time, but we're typically grilling and people are kind of snatching food as they go. And so we don't do a lot of feasting yet, though it's every so often we do. Yule, we get together and we have a more formal feast and we do a blessing, Feast of the Einherjar. But we're looking to actually purposely implement more feasting in what we do. It's just as a matter of practicality with people coming and going and what have you. We have been doing the serve yourself as you show up at John's house kind of a thing. But you know, we bless large feasts and large meals when we have them.
Well, that's excellent. Something that I used to do and still do sometimes, a good trick to get people around the table for a feast is to just wait them out until they're really hungry. Keep all the food until, you know, after bloat. Make sure that it takes a couple hours to get the bloat, and then you've got everyone's attention real fast. How about you, Daniel? Daniel appears to be frozen. Oh, there he is. Daniel, do you do any kind of meal blessings on the regular?
As often as we can. You know, as in a lot of American households, we don't always eat at the supper table, which is a real pet peeve of mine. I complain about it all the time. But whenever we get around the supper table as a family, yes, we do our meal blessing. But kind of like what you said, you know, every time I eat a peanut or something, I don't ask the gods to bless it. But yeah, so anytime we have, like, you know, the whole family together, you know, myself and my wife and all my kids and perhaps some of their kids, you know, we'll do a meal blessing then. And then, of course, we do meal blessings whenever we have. I'm going to have to get off here in a sec. And I know I'm jumping in where there's still more people to answer. But I wanted Nick to put up that fundraiser for the Baines. There's a family in North Carolina that's very loyal, very dedicated, and really industrious at Þórshof that are in a bad way right now. They have a very unfortunate set of circumstances surrounding their housing. And they're personal friends of mine, and personal friends of Svan's, personal friends of Tyler's. So any little bit anybody can do to kind of help them get a leg up to start the next stage in their life for their living conditions or their living situation would be greatly appreciated. Awesome family, young kids, and yeah, super loyal people. We need to give them as much help as we possibly can, folks.
All righty, guys. I am back. Where are we at, Cliff? Do we still got people that need to answer?
Yeah, just like last time. Other than me, we got the whole bottom row still. Oh, it's a square now.
Yeah, we're Brady Bunch now. So go for it, Cliff. You know who's gone.
All right. Tyler, Smooth Tyler, you're up next.
So yeah, we are very religious about it in our household. We're in the fortunate stage of having a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old that are very compliant with our dinner arrangements. I can understand how maybe over time that gets more difficult to maintain. But as of now, every single day for dinner time or any time that we have a meal at the table. So sometimes more than just dinner, but a majority of days is, supper time. We recite the meal blessing. I think that Alan Turnage came up with, which I love so much. I like the shorter one with just the acknowledgement of the gods and making the Thor's hammer, but I like the intimacy of the one that law speaker Alan Turnage came up with. And we also make a point of doing it in less comfortable situations. So if we have guests over that are not Asatru, we do not throw it to the side because we take it very seriously. So we tell them, we say, hey, we're going to do a meal blessing. You don't really have a choice to be comfortable with it or not, but just prepare yourself. This is what we do. So yeah, every day we do it, and it's a beautiful thing because my 2-year-old daughter, she is very smart and is very ahead in speech. The pediatrician says she talks almost like a 4-year-old already at almost 2.5 years old. But she goes, we say, Nora, would you like to say the meal blessing? She goes, we bless this food, might and main, hail the gods. So it's very important. And like I said previously, we have our ancestor altar and our God altar in our dining room. So as we're dined at the table, we see a wall full of pictures of all of our ancestors going back generations. And this collage of pictures of our ancestors continues to grow as I dig into like my grandparents and beg them to send me any pictures that they may have. And my wife's does the same. And so the wall keeps growing with these generations of our ancestors. So every day, my daughters see, especially towards the part where we say, hail the ancestors, or ask the ancestors to bless us within that meal blessing, we make an intentional shift in our focus towards the ancestor wall, as well as when we ask for the God's blessing as well, we'll make an intentional shift towards the God altar. So I think it's very important, ritualistically. So yeah, that's our daily practice. We're very religious about it. Even when we're out to eat, as awkward as that may be or may seem, we're very steadfast in our belief that that's an important ritual to partake in every day, and something I'm very proud of sticking to. And I would say I don't think we've missed many days, but if we do, it's almost like how I am with exercise. It's like if I miss it, I feel like something's wrong. Like something happened in the day that I feel off. Like, if you shower differently, it throws your whole day off. It's that same sentiment where it just throws your whole psyche off. So I think it's very important. And then in terms of when I do gatherings with the folk, Cliff laid it out very nicely. That approach is my approach. We have our nice chat period before ritual, maybe some little snacks, nothing too filling. And then we do ritual, and then it's time to feast. And I make sure that everyone gathers together beforehand, and we bless the entire meal. And then I also follow the standard AFA practices of women and children eating first, then the men, and then leadership. So yeah, very important to me. It's not as hard as it seems. You just got to make it a habit. And once you do, I don't think you'll regret it, because it adds continuity to your spirituality that I think can seem understated by such a simple ritual, but it's very important in my opinion.
Thanks, Tyler. So you mentioned the very popular meal blessing handed to us by law speaker Turnage. Would you mind reciting it for us?
Absolutely. We bless this food to might and main. Oh, Nick, come on. I could do it without reading it. Come on, take it up. We bless this food to might and main. Our bodies need to fill, to keep us hearty, whole, and hale, so we may work our will. Ancestors guide us, walk beside us, help us in our needs. Keep us on the path that is true, because we are our deeds. Hail the gods. Hail the folk. Hail the ancestors. Hail the Asatru Folk Assembly.
Thank you very much, Tyler. That one's very popular. I have seen that one more and more over the past several years. That is Githia Katie's favorite as well. The other one that I learned first and that I have adapted from when I first heard it from Founder McNallen, which invokes the hammer rite, is in the holy names of Odin, Balder, Frey, and Thor, may this food be blessed and may we be blessed. We remember the life that has been taken so that we may live. We remember the struggles and victories of our ancestors that have brought us together at this table today. We remember our living folk within and without, that they may know our gods and kinship with the folk. Hail the gods, hail the ancestors, hail the folk, hail the AFA. Let's eat. That let's eat part is all me. It was definitely it's something I started really early on in our moots and an early bloat group that turned into our kindred. It just kind of took, it was like, let's eat, because now it was feast time. Next up, I don't think we got to you yet. Witten Svan, does your family do a meal blessing, or did I get you already?
Oh no, I didn't go. I'm kind of in the same realm with Tyler. I was over here like, you're good. I was right in there. No, I definitely am one who espouses Law Speaker Turnage's food blessing. It was a proud moment of mine when my son got to lead it when I was like gravely ill, and he led it, and he came up and was so proud that he got to do that while I was in bed and locked away for the safety of everyone else. But yeah, we do it if there are children that are over our house that are not Asatru and they're friends and they're doing a sleepover. We tell them they don't have to say anything, but we are going to bless the food because this is our faith and this is our religion. And yeah, generally they're just quiet. Some of them get involved, which is fine too. But we don't really have, I think, anybody who's fundamentally against our religion, whether they're folk or not folk. Generally, most people that we know are know exactly what we're about and what we're doing, and we are amicable. And the other thing is we do it in public spaces, so we do it at restaurants, yeah, we I don't know. The one thing I would say is like we don't do it for breakfast usually, because at our house breakfast is rolling along with like homeschool and things like that. So that's a really odd thing. And then there's great grandmother, and it's just not a super planned out thing. I love catching my kids during lunch because I don't usually like to eat a lot of lunch right before I'm about to head to work, and because I work mid shift from like noon to 8, so catching them doing it all on their own is just so good. And then of course when we're at dinner, but I would say the one thing that I notice is, and I'm sure that Mike can attest to this, like in the 90s, there was kind of this knee-jerk reaction from Asatru community to just reject the idea of doing anything that was remotely looked like it was Christian. And the attitude of that has completely changed in our community to be thankful to the gods, to our ancestors, to everything that brought us to this moment at the table. And it used to be like such a kind of we don't do that kind of thing. And that has completely changed. And I think that's awesome. But I mean, if you're single and, you're not eating with a family and stuff like that, I think a lot of folks generally reserve their thankfulness for when they do bloat. And they're like, I'm thankful for the fruitfulness that I've received, the many meals I've had before this moment. And so I think that it's not necessarily something that we look at as being bad, but it is such a component that adds a whole new level when you're in a family or when you're in a kindred or, big groups, that is just so good. And I'm really, really glad to actually witnessed the change of that mentality.
Yeah, and back to your point, back then I used to say, well, they breathe oxygen too.
Right.
So should we not do that?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, yeah, back then I wouldn't be surprised at all. But I share your sentiment. I thoroughly enjoy how that has shifted and how that's changed. Because like I said earlier, we're not here to be in opposition to anyone else. We're here to build and focus on us and our gods. So yeah. Wonderful changes over the past 30 plus years.
For me, one of the things that makes it a feast is that there is a meal blessing. It's different from going through the drive-through, Bearded Tyler, you're up.
I'd like to say that it goes as well as Smooth Tyler's does, but as your kids get a little bit older, they come to an age where you don't want to push things on them. I know that growing up in a highly Protestant house, that made me resent the religion of my parents. So anytime that we go to the Hoff, for about 2 weeks after that, the kids are arguing about who gets to lead the meal blessing. Then it just gradually tapers off for a while, to the point where my middle son now, he'll roll his eyes and he doesn't want to do it and everything. He's like, "Do we have to do this?" I'm like, well, I feel like there's a line you have to ride there where you want to keep them on track, but you don't want to push them off. So in those moments, it's just kind of, well, we're going to do this. And if you don't want to do it, just, you have to be quiet and you just have to respect this. So it isn't as the common as I'd like to, but, when we do it, we do Alan Turnage's the meal blessing. We do it at all of our events because all of our events do have a small feast. So we do the meal blessing then, but individually in the household, it's kind of a hit or miss. After a Hoff event is the real regular and stuff because the boys are into it. And then it just kind of slowly drops off. But again, as a parent of like older kids, you just kind of have to ride that line. The last thing I want to do is to push them away. So I hope you are able to maintain that as your kids, they get older and stuff. Cause that's real beautiful, man.
Yeah, no, I even acknowledged in the beginning that it's easy when they're 2 and 1, but I will be reaching out to you for some advice as time goes on. I'm sure of it. So I appreciate that foresight though, because I know it's easy. Man, 2 and 1, they're the best. They love you no matter what. Everything's great, but I know I know it gets tough. So I'll be reaching out for some advice. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. My middle son, he hasn't ever known he hasn't ever known a world that wasn't Asatru. From his earliest days, we were Asatru. So he grew up in this. The older boy, he was 2 years old when we came home. So both of them, this is all they know. So it's like all this is real. This is a thing that we do all the time. But you know, they are kids. They've got Asatru everywhere in the house. This is our altar here. This is in the living room. We have a library in our house, and it has an altar in it. We have kind of a foyer, and that's where all the pictures of the ancestors are. There's a horg there for them. So, I mean, it's all over, but you have to keep their interest, or they will pull away.
Well, thank you, Tylers. I'll share with you, Matt. I'll pitch it back to you and ask if you have any thoughts on meal blessings, and I'll put you on the spot and ask if you have a preference between the McNalledge or Turnage versions of the meal blessing, both of which, of course, are completely acceptable.
So this is first, both of those are awesome. I do a modified version of Steve McNallen's version just because it's the first one I saw, but I'm always, I don't know. I always try to speak from the heart when I do prayers, which I think that meal blessings are a form of. So depending on the situation, what I usually do, I guess most common, what I'll do is, the sign of the hammer and the holy names of Odin, Balder, Frey, and Thor, may this food be blessed. May, depending on where we're at, may our home be blessed, and may our family that we have around this table be blessed, whether they're, my biological family there or the people I have gathered for an event. If there's something else to acknowledge, then I'll do that. And then I'll say, hail the Aesir, hail the folk, hail the AFA. And then again, we'll do the women and children first. If there's people gathered, if it's a family meal, it's a little bit different. But be completely honest, I need to do that more often. I like what Smooth Tyler said a lot about doing it even when it's not like a comfortable time to do it, because we got to train ourselves. Habits are really important. He also talked about habits. All of these things, if we come from a point of not doing them, doing things needs to be reinforced habitually. And we do that. There's a certain amount of muscle memory, and that applies to non-muscular things as well. You get in patterns, you get in habits to where something becomes your norm. And that's really, really important when you do something, when you want to accomplish something different than you've accomplished previously. So I think that's really important. I'm really happy hearing all your guys' experiences, especially with your kids when this is involved. And thank you for emceeing that, Cliff. I had to run. Speaking of kids, I had to go tuck mine in.
I've got your back always, sir.
I appreciate it. And know you do. Also, Smooth Tyler donated $50 to the Njordshof Fund. Thank you so much for helping us. That's very, very much appreciated. Thank you. So another kind of going around. Joe, what is your favorite holiday and why?
Well, my favorite holiday would have to be Winter Nights, because that's when I was Oath, and that's what I can make it to all the time. And I've had extremely wonderful experiences there. So I'd have to say coming to Winter Nights every year would have to be my top, because I'll be there again this year, and every year after. I'm hoping to be able to do other things like maybe Midsummer and certain other things across the country. But until then, that's been my top tier.
Mike, what's your favorite holiday and why?
I'm all about Yule. There's just something incredible about that. And I'm also all about Krampus. So that kind of segues in there. And I believe Witten and Githia Erickson's children might have a different opinion of that because they were here last Yule when I dressed as Krampus, and but I enjoy everything about the season, and our sun beginning its ascent yet again. So just something very, very special about that for me.
Smooth Tyler, favorite holiday?
I'm going to follow Mike, and Yule is my favorite. I think that winter is such an essential and critical part of who we are as a folk. It's a time to reflect on the year that we just witnessed and a time to prepare for the next. It's a time to share, in the bounty of what all of our hard efforts earned us over the more prosperous months in terms of cultivation and all that kind of stuff. It's a very spiritual time. I feel more connected to my family in that time. I'm not saying that I get distance from them at all, but I think it's a special time, and the seasons are designed in such a way that we have this kind of slower period to where we're in the house, we're with our family, we're enjoying each other's company, and like I said previously, reflecting on the year and preparing for the next. And it's just a special time. Me living in the desert, I'm from a Four Seasons area originally, and then I lived out west for a while, and I felt like I was never home there. And until I moved up here to the Shire, the beautiful Shire with a nice long winter, I realized that's what I was missing. That time of reflection and preparation for what is to come. It was really a void that I felt was a part of my life. Not saying that you can't achieve greatness in these other climates, but for me personally, growing in a place that had a nice winter originally, I felt like I missed that time. Even you can see it outside of Asatru too, in places that have a winter, is that people slow down and understand, and work slows down, and that's normal. It's a season to just expand and prepare. And I think it's invaluable. And I think it's a core tenet of why we are the way we are, to have foresight and be good neighbors to one another in case, your crops didn't do well. You had to be a good neighbor to have your neighbor take care of you through the winter. And this is where high trust comes from. And it's a very important time of year for me. So I would say Yule. And it's cool to see Yule stick through all the, oppression and repression that Abrahamism has forced upon our faith. That they could never get rid of a semblance of that holiday because it was so ingrained in us. So Yule is very special to me, and I love it.
What about you, Cliff?
I'm going to give a multi-part answer because I think a lot like the question about favorite gods, that the holy days really depends on one's perspective. And honestly, I love them all. I've got young children, so Yuletide, we make a big deal about Yuletide in our household. That season, the Yuletide season, has always been pretty wonderful for me. But when you've got young kids and you can just, part of it is utilizing it as a device to bring joy to them and to bring gratitude to them, to bring that out of them. And for me, at least, in doing so, that it does the same for me that way. Winter nights. I love winter nights. I have so much history and investment in winter nights. I do have to say, though, the day after Winter Nights is pretty awesome too. After putting a lot of work into an event on a scale like that, there is something about having nothing to do the next day that is just really refreshing. But AFA Winter Nights in particular is really close to my heart. At the camp we used to host it at, I met my wife there. I know, Matt, you met your wife there. So many of us on this call have been oathed there. I proposed to Katie there. There's just so many things, but that's it's all mixed up with the venue too. That's not the actual holy day. Honoring our ancestral mothers and being able to hear the whisper of our ancestors through the veil as it's thinning is really special. Also, I love food, so Þórshof is awesome because Katie makes this goat cheese bread that is just killer. And of course Thor is I want to say the most jovial of our gods, but that's probably not true. Got to account for Bragi, but it's a good time when you have a Thor party. So Þórshof is also really great. But I also love Midsummer in June. The Fireflies are coming out. I really can't make up my mind. They're all special in all so many different ways.
What about you, John?
They're all fantastic, and sometimes they, depending on where you are in life and what you're doing, they really hit hard, and that's great on any given Sunday. I do have particularly nostalgic feelings, like many people, about Winter Nights and Yule specifically.
It's fun.
Oh, for me, it's Yule all the way. I do the 12 nights. I like what Yule represents too for our people. I know that our ancestors really viewed the end of the year being around Winter Nights, and Winter Nights is extremely powerful, but our understanding of things has changed. So Yule has become this great galvanizing force, but also a chance for us to share our traditions with our families that are not Asatru. And I've never gotten any bad feedback from any of that. They've always just loved everything that we do. I don't do like Krampus or anything because I grew up with Grilla, and that was yeesh. So I don't really do a lot of that. The Yule White definitely leaves burnt pieces of wood for green
chocolate Pete.
No, smart to Pete. No. What do you do to my house? No, so like I definitely have him where he burns wood and gives him that for miserly children, for children who don't want to give, because the big thing is they get their gifts from their ancestors and then they give each other gifts, and that's so huge. And if they don't follow that, the Yule Elf just pitches in the crunchy firewood and maybe some goat pellets, and then he's not having it. So no, my favorite is Yule. Other than, I love all of them, but 100%. What are you doing in my house?
All right, Bearded Tyler, favorite holiday and why?
So as far as the national events go, I've really only gone to 3 national events, but Austera would be my big one. That's when Asatru became real to me. Austera 2018, that Odin the bloat you did out there. I remember you called for more wood on the fire, more and more and more, and we just kept on piling logs on over and over and over. And I mean, that fire was larger than any fire I had ever seen. And that that was my the coming home experience. And the Austaras after that have been unique in their own way, but wonderful. Austara for this year, the amount of the people that we had out at the Hoff, we made the actual floor of the Hoff sag. It was incredible. I renewed my vows to my wife at that event, so Austara will always have a place in my heart. But for local events, it would have to be the May Day. For 2 years now, we've done a pretty nice May Day. All the aesthetics of that event, from picking out the maypole, we get that cut. On the way up there, my wife and I have a place where we pick the rhododendron, because at that time in Appalachia, the rhododendron are in the bloom, and it blooms in all kinds of colors. The pinks, the whites, reds, orange, all kinds of colors. So we pick a lot of that on the way up to Tennessee, and we make a topper out of that. And all of our ladies, they make their crowns, the flower crowns, and we dance around the maypole. We tie the ribbons around it. It's a lot of fun. You know, I don't dance ever, but we dance around the maypole. We play old Appalachian tunes and stuff on a speaker as we dance around. One day we're gonna have a guy out there with a fiddle, and we're gonna make it good, you know. But till then, we just have to use a speaker. But I love the May Day. I'd say that is my favorite overall. Has to be the May Day.
That sounds awesome. I'm just picturing a lot of those actually at Sigrheim.
When you move out here, you're going to have to experience the May Day in Appalachia. We're going to have you out there to the eastern end of the state, and we're going to have all you guys out for Appalachian May Day. It'll be a lot of fun.
I mean, technically, Sigrheim is in the last county that counts as Appalachia out there. So geographically, it counts. But no, I really want music out there, and I want a fiddler, and I want a banjo guy, and I want some stuff. But anyways, we'll get to that when the time comes. Holiday wise, man, so many different ones. May Day, I've got a lot of really fond May Day memories. It's just fun. The dancing around the maypole is such a, I don't know, it's just such a happy and fun experience for our folk, you know, old and young and everything else in between. It's fun, and I look forward to it, and I love doing that. Yule, I am so much more winter oriented, I guess. Not even really winter, just like fall and a chill in the air and some stuff. So Yule, as I want to say Yule, absolutely, it's a big deal. You've got lights. I've got a lot of childhood memories wrapped up in it. Yule for all the reasons that everybody says Yule, but spiritually, winter nights, and specifically the Sigrblót during winter nights, is where I've had some of the most powerful religious experiences in my life. I mean, yeah, I can't say enough, and I've talked on here a lot about them, and I get a chill just thinking about them. But those have been tremendously powerful. So I'd say those two are probably my favorites. But again, all of our holy days are awesome. And if you've got a couple that aren't your favorite, then you should fix that and figure out why they're not your favorite and step up your celebration game. But that said, hey, thank you guys all for making the point of being here tonight. You guys are awesome. You have such a large and dynamic, just dynamic in so many different ways spread in the Þórshof district. I appreciate you guys all the work you guys do to make that Hoff and that district such a success. And I appreciate you guys joining us this evening. So thank you guys all very much. And I look forward to talking to you all and having you guys all back on either collectively or individually or all points in between. I appreciate you putting up with the impromptu nicknames, Bearded Tyler and Smooth Tyler. I second Mandy on that. I hope Smooth Tyler sticks. I think that one's a keeper.
I'll take it.
You guys are awesome. I've enjoyed it tonight, and I'm sure our audience has as well. Thank you guys. Next week, Svan and I will be going over the Lokasena, which is going to be interesting. And I hope you guys have it might be a little bit spicy. I hope you guys have a really good week. Talk to you guys then, if not before. And until then, hail the Aesir, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps.
Good night, everyone.
Hail.